Let me see where I am. Okay, yes, good evening. Welcome to the search engine with Anthony. I've got to give a big shout out to Tiny G, who's taking care of business for the past couple of hours. You know, as always, dancing DJ, keeping you entertained. We'll be back next week, every Thursday. Okay, sounds a bit timid. Hope you can hear me. All right. Okay, so this evening, yeah, it's a show that's moving on, carrying on from last week when we spoke to Marcia Hutchinson with regard to her stepping down from the position of councillor for Beswick and Coates. Didn't get much time with her, but today we're going to get much more time to sit down, relax, talk about this topic, which I believe is a very important topic. I think it's got more ramifications than we think, really, and there's a lot that we need to learn from what's taken place. I'm sending out a request for support and help this evening, especially from my regular search engine listeners, and I want you to get involved. Some critical thinking, some sharing some of your kind of thoughts and opinions with regard to this situation. And as an African Caribbean community, I mean, this radio station is an African Caribbean station, and there's a reason why it's an African Caribbean station, and there's reasons why there's other stations out there for different other groups and different cultures for that same reason why you want and would like to have different people in positions of I'm not going to say power, but the representation of speaking your voice, of keeping you aware of what's going on within your city, making sure that you get things for your community that you deserve. You know, somebody that speaks your language. Obviously, there's different people have different. What could I say without being too controversial? But before we even get controversial, let me just give you that caveat, which is the views and opinions expressed this evening on Legacy Radio, not necessarily the views and opinions of Peace FM, of Legacy, you heard that, of Legacy Radio. And we're not here to offend, we're not here to upset. It's just to share discussion, debate, build awareness, involvement, which is something that this radio station was set up to do. And also very much in the remit of the search engine, in which we try to share information, get you involved, and share issues with you that are relevant to you. You know, we get a lot of people say, okay, we're not about politics, but politics is in everything. You can't get away from it. But the main thing, when you're not got a certain understanding of politics, and I'm not great in my knowledge of politics, but it's what is controlling your life. It's what makes the decisions for your community, from whether you're getting your bins empties, whether you're getting a Pelican crossing in a certain type of the road. Decisions are being made for you and on your behalf, and sometimes you're having no say or no understanding of the decisions that are being made. Yeah, there's loads of times that you can check back on the search engine when we've had discussions, whether it's to do with education, whether it's to do with crime. Yeah, I had a big rant a while ago when Romario was taken away for us, another young person over many years. And how do we respond to that? How as a community do we get support, or do we get support that we really think is very much in the interest of building and changing the community? You know, I said Peace FM before, and I'll go back and say Peace FM, because Peace FM came about because of things that were going on in the community, and to try and use this station as a voice to create change, right? So in this situation with Marcia, you know, the little bit that she shared last week was very heavy. It was quite hearing, traumatizing, and that was just that little bit. She wrote a 5-page resignation letter, which really went into a lot more details, and you can hear and feel how she felt when you hear or listen or read that statement. But it probably resonates not just for somebody who's in the political circle and within the council, but for many people of many backgrounds. But I'm speaking to African Caribbean at the moment, that would have experienced and gone through similar things just in the workplace or in trying to set up a business to try and do something to make a change in your community, and how that then is received and how that is supported, if it's supported at all. You know, many times I've said, you know, there's many organizations, many people within the community that are trying to do really hard work with very little support, with very short-term funding, you know, 6-month funding, a year's funding, 2 years funding, in a vulnerable area, so-called disadvantaged people, vulnerable young people, and then you're not knowing whether you're going to even have a job for a year. So that makes you a vulnerable worker working with vulnerable people. Okay. Now, like I said, Marcia did a 5-page resignation letter, and I know many of you have probably heard her say it last week, but you haven't gone and read it. You did the whole letter. You know, sometimes people, if it's longer than a tweet, you're not even going to read it. So I'm going to try and do this, and I've gone past the time that I wanted to, but you know, you're going to have to forgive me on this, because I think it's really, really important, this topic that we're doing. So I am going to, what I've done, because I know that many of you haven't read it, I've actually used some artificial intelligence to make it into an audio, and I'm going to play this for you. I'm going to go a bit past the time. It is quite, well, it's 5 pages, so as an audio, it is long. So I'm asking you to sit down, tune out, and then tune in and listen to what Marcia Hutchinson, in the 6 months that she was involved with the Manchester Council, has actually gone through. So bear with me, and also Legacy Radio, also forgive me for just going into the time of the advert just a little bit late. But I really think it's important that you hear this, and I think it's important that maybe tomorrow, when you're going for your patty, or you're going for your dumpling, or you're going for your barbershop or your hairdressing, that you have a little discussion and debate, and some things you might want to talk about if you don't get something from the resignation letter or from the show, such as some questions you can ask. Why is there only 2 African Caribbean councillors when the equality quota should be 10? Would there be a difference if the quota was as it should be? If this is the reaction to just 2 councillors, what would it be if there was 10 in there? What would the reaction possibly be from the wider council members? Yeah, just a few that I'm throwing out there. But I'm going to play you the resignation. I've done this, so let's just see how it goes. I was told off by my sister, who said I should have done it different, but anyway, it's done. We're here now. I'm going to play it to you, and then we'll come back and do the advert, and then go over to hopefully Anthony, Anna, and be able to speak with Marcia as well. Your views and opinions are always wanted, needed, much appreciated. You can get involved on the text line. Text line number is 07599642626, and you can call the phone line as well, 01612225636. Okay, I'm going to play this for you now, so please just listen, and let's go. Okay, here we go. This is Marcia Hutchinson's resignation letter. 10 minutes, sit back, sit down, get your pen, get your paper, get your questions, and get involved. Here we go.
As a local councillor. Why? No. Because I have endured more racism and bullying in my 5 years in the Labour.
There, let me just go back with that. So start that and back, and here we go.
The full resignation letter from Marcia Hutchinson. I am stepping down after barely 6 months as a local councillor. Why? Because I have endured more racism and bullying in my 5 years in the Labour Party than the rest of my life combined. There is no point in staying if I can't make a difference. I spent almost 20 years running a multicultural educational publishing company working with schools all over the UK, for which I was awarded an MBE in 2010. I am an expert on racism both through lived experience and through my work. I stood as a councillor to address the serious underrepresentation of African heritage people in Manchester. I am the only African Caribbean councillor in Manchester to advocate for the Windrush generation, to increase green spaces and to try to ensure that council policies on social and affordable housing are actually implemented. I also trained as a planning solicitor, so felt I could be a useful member of the planning committee. In 2017 there was only one visibly African heritage councillor on Manchester City Council. 2 others also identified as black. This, in a city where black people make up over 10% of the community. So I started the Pipeline Project, with support from MPs, Afzal Khan and Lucy Powell, a number of other councillors and funding from the National Labour Party. Our aim was to provide training, support and mentoring to African heritage people who want to become local councillors. 3 of the first 6 pipeline students, myself included, were elected in May 2021. 2 African heritage people have also been selected for safe Labour seats for 2022. Irinma Mbe in Moss Side and Olusegun Bambo in Higher Blackley. Olusegun received support from the Pipeline Project in 2018. This work was not welcomed by some in Labour Party leadership positions. I have been informed on more than one occasion that I am racist and engaging in identity politics. I was even told that I must apologize for my racism in order to be supported by certain sections of the Labour Party. In 2019 I was elected as Women's Officer for the local campaign forum, which covers the 5 Manchester Labour constituencies. The only 2 shortlisted candidates were myself and another black woman, Ekubeyunu. Despite the fact that delegates could abstain, 8 out of 53 chose instead to write derogatory comments on their ballot papers. Example, they are both shite. They only did this when both candidates were black. To sit in a room knowing that almost 15% of those also present are willing to write such things is traumatizing. I am eternally grateful to over 100 comrades who found this behavior vile enough to organize and sign a letter of protest. Council leader Richard Leith was present at this meeting, which took place in the town hall, but, to my knowledge, did nothing to condemn the behavior and no attempts were made to identify the authors of the comments. After a regional and national investigation, Manchester Labour finally agreed to implement race awareness training. But this was hastily cancelled as soon as lockdown was announced and like all other training, it has never been rescheduled. As a new councillor, I entered a culture where councillors who do not toe the leadership line are ruthlessly bullied. Criticism is simply not tolerated. Any objections to policies which the leader has decided to implement are dismissed as coming from the sectarian left. More often than not, the whip's office is a tool used to carry out the bullying, but the culture came from the top. When, for instance, I pointed out, in the aftermath of the Sarah Everard murder, that more tolerance is given to male councillors who have engaged in violence against women, including Richard Leith himself, than female councillors who protest against it, Councillor Leith sent a letter to all 94 councillors as well senior council officers stating among other things that I have never experienced one member causing so much anger in the group, and I want them to know that something is being done about it. Marcia is one of a small number that complains about a toxic atmosphere in the group. I'm inclined to agree with her, but it wasn't like that before they joined us. After Richard Leith announced his resignation in September, I wrote a piece arguing that changes needed to be made by the new leader to improve the working of the Labour group. 94 out of 96 Manchester councillors are Labour. Action is often taken for political rather than disciplinary reasons, and that those disciplined are not told who has complained about them or often the exact nature of the complaints. A system ripe for abuse. I was threatened with disciplinary action by the Whip's office for tweeting support for Pipeline Project alumni who were shortlisted for council seats. Apparently, there is an unwritten rule that forbids support for candidates who are standing against sitting councillors. I say unwritten because I checked the Labour Party rulebook and I broke no rules. I did not campaign against any councillor. I simply tweeted in support of all shortlisted Pipeline alumni. But to those who think being a councillor is a job for life, the two things are synonymous. Richard Leith wrote another email to all 94 Labour group councillors which confirmed that I broke no rules but condemned me anyway, having allegedly received a large number of complaints about me. Labour Group Secretary Councillor Pat Carney sent a series of emails to all 94 Labour councillors stating, among other things, that he has been accused of bullying and racist behaviour, which has upset me greatly, because, of course, a white man's feelings on being accused or racism matter more than those of the black women he is discriminating against. The combined effects of the emails from Councillor Carney lessen the whips was felt immediately as other councillors were given a green light to join the pile on. Councillor Tina Hewitson wrote that Marcia speaks about diversity in the group, yet she wants to remove a councillor of African origin. Where is the diversity in that? To me that is uncomradely and racist. She did not see the irony in labeling a lifelong black anti-racist Kamapima as racist. I sought legal advice which confirmed that Councillor Hewitson's email is defamatory, but I don't have the funds for a legal battle. This was not a working environment in which I could function. Colleagues stopped returning my calls and even council officers failed to respond to emails. If you have ever been the subject of a group bullying pile-on, you will know just how stressful it is. My doctor advised me to take time off. I sent a 2-month sick note to Councillor Susanna Reeves, the Chief Whip, and asked to vote in the 5th of October leadership election online. Permission was granted, but the very next day she decided, notwithstanding my sick note, that following your engagement with the Labour group by virtual attendance and participation in the vote for the new leader and subsequent posts on social media, my view is that we can now proceed with investigations. I was still being subjected to disciplinary proceedings while off sick, and if I didn't attend, they would go ahead without me. As Manchester's only African Caribbean councillor, one of my first acts was to put forward a proposal for the creation of the role of lead councillor for Windrush. Despite having one of the largest Windrush-affected communities in the country, Manchester City Council has done little to support them. Over 60 councillors supported my proposal and Labour group officers recommended that the full Labour group approve the post. However, a decision was later made, presumably by Richard Leese, not to put the matter to the vote. What is the point of democratic structures if an autocratic leader can just tear them up when it suits him? Sadly, my experience is not the worst. Fellow new black councillor Eka Bayunu has been under near constant disciplinary action from the day in May that she challenged Richard Leese for the leadership. Councillor Bayunu's challenge, combined with a feared deselection in his home seat of Crumpsall, could well have been the issues which brought home the fact that his days were numbered. Councillor Bayunu is still being disciplined by the Whip's office. Her latest crime? Sending out a copy of her manifesto for the October leadership election to those councillors who requested it. They can, and probably will, keep up this bullying indefinitely, and it is designed to wear us down. The fact that this treatment is being meted out to the 2 new black women councillors is apparently entirely coincidental. The narrative being pushed is that they are not bullying us because we are black. They are doing it because we are terrible people. I will continue to push for new parks in my ward of Ancoats and Beswick, and support for the Manchester Windrush generation. But I have, sadly, come to the conclusion that I can be much more effective outside the corrosive reach of the Labour group whips. I would like to say a heartfelt thank you to those of my councillor colleagues who supported the role of Windrush lead, and those who complained about the behaviour of councillors Leese, Carney in the Whip's office, and those Labour Party comrades who signed protest letters. The new leader, Councillor Bev Craig, kindly reached out to me, and I hope to meet her for an exit interview which, whilst too late for me, might make a difference for future black councillors. Manchester will be a better city when councillors can engage in genuine debate without fear of retribution from the leader. My campaigning has not been in vain. I am proud of the work of the pipeline project, which has, in a few short years, almost doubled the number of black councillors in Manchester. Marcia Hutchinson MB.
Your number one community station. Yeah. This is Legacy 90.1.
Feel the vibe on Legacy.
Hi, I'm Natural Mystic. Help keep Legacy 90.1 flowing through your airwaves by supporting the Love Legacy Recovery.
Okay. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthea. Hi, Marcia.
Got you with your mouthful there.
I'm just grabbing something. I've come just come in.
That's okay. All right, we're just on the advert. Yeah, we're still live online. So
Hi,
that's
Anna.
in the advert, and as soon as they're done, then we'll come back and get into the discussion. Yeah. So how are you all doing?
I'm good. Looking forward to it. It's interesting to hear the electronic voice reading my words.
I know, but I just felt that I know, and sometimes a lot of people who will see your 5 pages, Marcia, and not read it. Yeah.
Yeah, no. If you'd asked me, I'd have recorded the audio for you. But
Oh wow.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Because, and again, my sister, because I checked it with my sister just to see if it would work, and she got on my case, said the same thing. Why didn't you get somebody to read it? You know.
You know what? I might just record it anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be good to do that.
The electronic voice doesn't do quotation marks, so a bit of it you couldn't quite get those bits.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that would be brilliant, and because I think there's just so much points that you make in there that I think resonate with so many people, and I think this evening I'd like to, with the help of Anna and with the help of Anthony, really delve into some of the things that you talked about. But it raises a lot of issues that I know topics we've been covering on the search engine with regard to relationships with the council and issues around, I said it before, education, policing, crime, and just how much we actually are fully aware as a community about what takes place in the council. I mean, can I ask you again just quickly with the quota situation? When you say like there's a percentage in the sense that they're supposed to be, is it 10%, 2%, 1%?
3%, but it depends who you're counting. So
Right.
one person has a Nigerian grandfather, and you'd only know she was black if she told you. In fact, there are 2 who I'd say fitted into that
I'm
category.
sorry for cutting you there, Master. We're going to come back and then I'll ask you that again. 1 minute.
Oh, the vibe.
Legacy 90.1.
Good evening. Welcome back. You're on Tuned to the Search Engine with Anthony. And yes, we are online this evening. We're on YouTube, on SEUK Global. We are also on Facebook on Legacy 90.1. And I've got my guests. We've got Anna Rodriguez, got Marcia Hutchinson, and Anthony. He is with us. He's the noisy one, making noise in the background at the moment. But he will be here with us and he'll be sharing his skills and knowledge with us. So let me just, first of all, before we go back to Marcia, because we did introduce Marcia last week, let me first say a hello to Anna and thank her very much for joining us this evening. Anna, thank you for coming on the show. It's a real honour and a pleasure. As Councillor Anna Robery from Liverpool, and she used to be the Lord Mayor also of Liverpool. Sadly, she chose to step down from that post. Anna, do you want to just give us a quick intro about yourself, if you can?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was on the show under better circumstances, but increasingly more and more we're seeing black women and men being, singled out and being abused within political policies. I mean, I've been a councillor since 2006 and actually came in for some of the same reasons as Marcia, to increase representation of the global majority in the country. I went through the Operation Black Clothes programme prior to that in 2005. And we didn't have any black councillors at all in Liverpool in 2006. We'd had previously 2 black women councillors, one at a time, one after the other, prior to me coming into politics. And for the first 6 years, I was the only black councillor within the Labour Party in Liverpool. And I can just let you know, it was one of the most loneliest places to be. But, I came into it with my eyes wide open, with a real conviction to change the shape of politics and the political landscape. I didn't realise then in 2006, it'd take me over a decade to increase the representation. The experience that Marcia's had, unfortunately, and many other elected members, is all too common within the political arena. The racism is, it's just in enormous levels of racism within political parties. But I think the worst situation is that we're not naive. We know about racism. We know it exists across all the various strands. It doesn't discriminate about where it shows its face. But one thing that surprised me, and possibly did surprise you, Marcia, is just the lack of knowledge and commitment and understanding and conviction to bring about change and eradicate racism from our political system. And, because we always see the tick boxes that they put out, publicly on the websites, we've got an EDI policy and we've done this and we're committed to that. The reality is something completely different. And unfortunately, because of that reality, people like myself and Marcia are the product of that environment, whereby we are subjected to enormous levels of stress and racism and discrimination within the role that we choose to take. And we either put up with it and continue regardless, or we put up with it and fight the fights that we can fight. And we have to choose our battles wisely. Otherwise, we'd be fighting every day like a prize fighting on our feet. And so that's a bit of my background. I never actually aspired to be Lord Mayor of the city. But Liverpool's history in terms of enslavement and the history of the transatlantic slave trade, it was a double-edged sword for me because I knew the level of corruption and racism within the structures. But I chose to take the opportunity and replaced a councillor who had actually been found guilty of passing on racist videos amongst other colleagues, etc., and had to stand down. I hope I left the city in a better place than what I found it in terms of people's understanding and knowledge of just different cultures and the global majority. I'm optimistic, but I'm also a realist. And if there's nobody in these places, if there's nobody there in terms of Marcia's position on the pipeline and OBV and black representation to continue the fight, we are gonna lose this fight, because it needs a constant stream of strong, fresh, alert representatives, because it is it really is. And people like us, we become burnt out because the level of discrimination and racism that we have to endure is just it's impossible. So that's why we need the support, and this is why these conversations and discussions that we have tonight are really, really needed to get that message out. Some people say they don't do politics. Well, I say you better do politics before politics does you. And here we are, two black women and two strong black women with a wealth of knowledge and experience under our belts. And we've even been, we've had to walk away, basically.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Anna. Just quickly, Anna, you said that you came into this with your eyes wide.
Yeah.
Oh. Knowing then that because of your stance, I was gonna say you were gonna get it. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like if you go into that kind of arena, and it's not just in the political arena, sometimes it's in just people's workplaces, and you stand up for equality or justice. It's like if you're, let me say, a person of colour, and you are not getting backlash, then sometimes it's like you're not really doing something right.
Listen, every small gain, and often they are small gains on the journey to enlightenment, shall we say. Every small gain that we make is a giant step. Unless you're within that environment, within that arena, you really don't understand the level of structural racism. And, you know, we see that in day-to-day life, but when you're trying to function as a black woman within an inherently racist structure, then it brings home just how appalling it is and what we're subjected to. And so I knew that that's what existed, because cities like Liverpool and Manchester, we've got, you know, a grotesque history in terms of the way black people have been treated. And so I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But I also knew that, you know, we had to be the trailblazers. We had to be the people who put our foot in the pond and created those ripples that will make sure that we do get other black representatives coming through behind us. And I know for certain Marcia is going to be one of the most supportive women in terms of other women who come behind her. And our network nationally of black women and black men, you know, we have to be that support structure, because it's really difficult. You know, and people do take it as a personal attack on them. It's not. It's a very structured way of getting rid of people who they don't see to be as part of their club.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Anthony?
Good evening, Anthony.
Hiya. Thanks again for joining us. If you could just give an introduction a bit to yourself, but then also, because I know you've been leading and doing some absolutely amazing work with regard to supporting Windrush victims, and if you could just say to us, kind of Manchester's kind of position where it pertains to people who have been victims of the Windrush scandal.
Well, as we all know, the Windrush scandal came to light through Guardian articles in 2018, and in Manchester there was a group calling themselves Windrush Defenders that started to meet at the Windrush Millennium Centre, and we looked at what we could do. I spoke at that meeting, and I'd had previous experience with the Home Office, with being threatened with deportation, so I had a lot of empathy and understanding about what goes on. And I'd also recently graduated with doing a law degree. So I asked Leonie Shaw-Brown, who had been on the course with me, and Lorna Downer, a number of other people, to start doing surgeries. And in those surgeries, we help people with their documentations. And we've still been doing it to this day to help people. So over the last 3 years, we've helped hundreds of people, you know, get their status back. So that means, you know, either getting indefinite leave to remain or citizenship. And the process at the moment is gone on to look at, you know, helping people to get compensation, but then realizing that there were shortcomings in both schemes, the Windrush scheme and the compensation scheme. We made representations to the Home Office. We weren't getting very much joy from the Home Secretary. She'd set up this group to report to the Home Office how the schemes were going, and we tried to get some changes through that. We weren't getting anywhere, so we decided to take the Home Office to court. And we should have had a hearing on November the 16th, but that was adjourned because one of the barristers that was helping pro bono took ill. So we're asking the courts to declare the schemes not fit for purpose, and that would mean that the government had to go away and think again. We're also calling for a Windrush Act, which would restore the citizenship of the Windrush generation and their descendants, but also look at some of the issues that we've picked up in our surgeries from the testimonies of people. You know, we found that the discrimination that had gone on in terms of the status with regards to immigration, there were similar things in education, in health, and in the criminal justice system, as we all know. And so a lot of disparities have built up over the years. You know, we've heard about lots of African Caribbean children not achieving in school. Only 3.7% of them achieving 3 A levels, whereas with white British it's 11%, with Indian it's 17%, with Chinese it's 25%. So those disparities, we want to see them tackled. So we're saying that there should be a duty placed on public bodies to tackle these disparities. At the moment, you know, there's a race equality duty not to discriminate or to consider what impact your policies are going to have. But you know, if people have been discriminated against for decades and there are disparities, there's nothing to get the authorities to do anything about it. So that's one of the things that, you know, Windrush defenders are campaigning for. And so this is where the work starts to branch out, and we realize that there's a lot of people around who are in situations, and you know, there's a hostile environment that's in many areas of public life and in work. And when Marcia's situation arose and we heard about it, well, we thought we had to make a stand and show solidarity. So we went out to St. Peter's Square in front of the town hall with our banner, and we were joined by yourself, Anthony, but also from Liverpool, Councillor Anna Rothery came along to show solidarity. We had a few other people that came, and it's not about the numbers, it's just making a stand, making a mark to say that, you know, we've taken notice and we're going to take action. And so we went into the Ahmed Iqbal.
Anthony, sorry for stopping you there, because I'm just thinking about you know, time with regard to Windrush and Windrush victims and Manchester. Because I know Marcia was actually looking to be a Windrush lead in Manchester. Was there a need for that lead, for that position?
Most definitely. Since we've been working with people who have been affected over the 3 years, you know, Lucy Powell told us that her constituency had the largest number of people in the country in the one constituency that's been affected. And since we've been doing it, there's been no support and no help at all whatsoever, not even to say here's a meeting room from the council. We've had lots of support from the MPs, Lucy Powell, Afzal Khan, Kate Green. They've helped with the surgeries, they've helped people to fill in application forms and so on, but nothing from the councillors and nothing from the council at all.
Okay, so this kind of like goes a bit to, again, Marcia said this, and I mentioned the statement that Manchester City Council made after the death of George Floyd. So it seems, and she says, well, some things are on paper and doesn't come into reality. And in saying that, I've got, before we go to the break and we'll come back and we can get into the discussion, and I have asked Anthony and Anna to co-host with me this evening, because I do believe they bring greater knowledge to this discussion than I do. But there's this statement that I found that it was done by Councillor Luther Rahman. I think he was the deputy leader, and this was in 2019. And just to my sister, I'm going to read this. It says, Manchester is forever grateful for the contributions of the Windrush generation to our city and our nation. These courageous men and women came to the UK and contributed not only to our post-war economic recovery, but to all facets of social, cultural and political life. The poor treatment of the Windrush generation is an outright scandal. They and their families have been put through appalling stress, hardship and indignity, and it is inexcusable that so few have received support from the Windrush Compensation Scheme. We call upon the government to address this grave injustice and correct the wrongs of the Home Office in destroying their paperwork and not keeping adequate records. Manchester stands with the Windrush generation and all who have been affected by this lack of support. Manchester citizens seeking help can contact Manchester City Council or partner organisations such as the Advice Bureau to secure in their knowledge that their confidence will be maintained. We will work alongside credible organisations until justice has been achieved for the Windrush generation. So very quickly then, Auntie, is this saying, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this, or is it suggesting that you're not a credible organisation?
Well, they haven't worked alongside any organisation, because there was a recent report that was done, I think it was an internal one, and basically they talked about various events that they'd attended or supported in terms of celebrations, but the people who are affected, who have lost their jobs, who not been able to get health treatment, or who've been locked out of the country and are very distressed, that they weren't celebrating. They were looking for support to get themselves back on their feet, and none of that, no help at all has come to those people from the council.
Okay. Right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. See you in a bit.
Feel the vibe on Legacy.
WISSC presents.
Yeah. All right, guys. Yes. So we're still on air. We're just playing some adverts terrestrially. So I'm not going to do this one there, but just in this time, because there's another quote that I found. I think it was around virtually the same time, not necessarily to do with Windrush. This was from Richard Lee's, leader of the council. And he said, discrimination takes many forms, but in whatever guise it takes, it must be challenged head on. This is the only way we can make the world a more fair and equal place to live for everyone. The ongoing protests in America may feel thousands of miles away, but they are asking for the fundamental right to live, be safe, and be free. These are the simple requests that we as a global community of people should have the right to expect. Manchester has always been a city that tries to unite our communities while celebrating our diversity. For this reason, Manchester will always stand in solidarity with those who feel they have no other choice other than to protest and fight for a more equal place in the world. Does that sound like the person that you know, Marcia?
Can I come in on that?
You can.
I think a lot of organisations and individuals did a lot of bandwagon jumping after the murder of George Floyd. It was seen to be the thing to do, but it's not about what they say, it's about what they do. Anyone can put out a statement condemning racism, and organisations love putting out statements condemning racism in theory. But when it comes to condemning and dealing with racism in practice, when it involves particular individuals, suddenly they find a reason that what's happening to this particular individual is not racism. And that is repeated throughout political parties. A statement doesn't mean anything unless you back it up with action. And Manchester has not backed it up with any action. To actively stop the creation of a post of Windrush lead amongst the councillors. This is not a paid post. This is just something where an individual councillor would be a named point of contact. They went to extraordinary trouble to stop that happening after 62 councillors, this is 62 out of 96, had actually signed a proposal in support of it. And the reason they did that is because they don't actually care about the Windrush community. What they do care about is individual councillors getting anything that might look like power. And if I became the Windrush lead, I could speak on Windrush right across the council, and that's the last thing they wanted. They only want people...
Legacy 90.1.
Okay, welcome back, Aaron, to the Search Engine with Anthony. I'm currently here speaking with Marcia Hutchinson, Anthony Brown, and Councillor Anna Rothery. Before we just went to the break, I read out that little piece of a statement, and Marcia talking, and she's confirming that more or less, listen, things are written, but they are not being put into action. So let me just ask again, and then hopefully you can link this onto what you were saying when I stopped you, Marcia. Then when these things are put out, whether it's on paper, whether it's in a speech and stuff like that, is it then for us to make sure that they put these things in action? Do we need to be keeping asking them, look, you said this last month, you said that, this?
Yeah, they need to be held to account. So in May 2019, I attended one of Andy Burnham's town hall meetings. And as mayor, I stood up in that public meeting and asked him a question. And my question was, Andy Burnham, as mayor of Greater Manchester, what have you done to support the Windrush generation? I had my phone out and I recorded his answer, and he said, and I quote, "I'll put my hand up. I've done nothing, but I will do more." And the fact that a local politician can say, "I've done nothing to support a group," and this was just after the Home Secretary had resigned. This is how big a story it was, how big a political story. But Andy Burnham felt entirely comfortable saying, "Yep, I've done nought." And 2 months later, because these town halls have happened every month, I went to the next town hall and I said, "Hello, Andy." And he said, "I thought you'd be here." I said, "Okay, it's 2 months later. What have you done?" "Oh, I went to Carnival." And it's this idea that if they turn up to a black event and they eat a patty and some chicken and some rice, that is their contribution to the Windrush generation. It's kind of through the looking glass in terms of ridiculousness. You can put out statements all you like, but if you don't do anything, if you look at the people who have suffered in Manchester, none of them are saying, yes, the council has helped us, because the council hasn't. In fact, the council have gone to they've gone to extremes not to help the Windrush generation, because that might give black politicians more power. And they would rather the Windrush generation starved than to have someone like me in a role as a lead Windrush councillor. And I mean that.
What do you mean when you say it might give somebody like yourself or that person more power? What do you mean?
If I was elected as the Windrush lead, I could put press releases out saying, as Windrush lead, I'd like to see the council do this, I'd like to see them do that. I would have a platform on which to speak. And that could not be tolerated. It was fine until Richard Leese was challenged for the leadership. At that point, Akua Bayunu challenged him for the leadership in May. Before that challenge, everything was fine. Yeah, Marcia, it makes sense for you to be Windrush lead. You're the only African Caribbean councillor. I brought the subject up within 48 hours of my election, and everyone said, yeah, great idea. Because if you think about it, if you don't want to do anything, name so-and-so Windrush lead, don't give her any resources, but it's like, yeah, we've got a Windrush lead. But they weren't even willing to do that because Richard Leese felt under threat by a black councillor, and therefore all of the black councillors who were seen to be her friend had to have any power that they might have removed. So overnight, the decision changed. Literally, the agreement was ripped up, even though an agreement had been put forward at Labour Group officers meeting, which is the 5 or 6 people who run Labour Group. They said, yep, great idea. We will recommend to the full council that they approve this. Then at May, nothing happened. June, nothing happened. I'm like, why is nothing happening? It's basically, we've changed our mind because we don't want you to have any power. And we'll carry on with a sham consultation exercise. But they were not going to do it. They don't want anyone to have any power who might disagree with them, who might call them to account. You're fine in Manchester as long as you do not criticise the actions of the council.
It makes a whole mockery then of the council, because I suppose most people feel that they're voting for the councillors to go in there and actually, like you say, to have that voice. You kind of want the impression that people are in those council chambers fighting, arguing, and putting forward the views, opinions, and needs of their constituents, and actually see that as if you're not doing that, then something's wrong with you.
The way it works is, if you're going to say, actually, I think you should have done X or you should have done Y, you have to couch it in terms of, you've been excellent, you've done so well. There's just this tiny, tiny little area where we could possibly improve something. Anything that sounds on the surface like criticism is treated as an existential attack. It's very odd, considering that that Labour has 94 out of 96 council seats. so the biggest in the country. But a culture, I would say a leadership cult, was developed under Richard Lees, whereby you could not criticize Richard Lees. If you did, your days were numbered. And it's this very fragile legacy of an autocrat. I'm hoping that Bev Craig will be different, and I soon have an exit interview with her, which is a lot more than Richard Lees ever offered.
Yeah.
But
just one more thing, and I'll just bring in
Sorry, Anthony.
And I'll just bring in Anthony and Anna, because what I'm thinking then, really going into that place, as you know, Anna talked about being the only you were the only African Caribbean woman when you went in there. That's a really dangerous situation to be walking into. How then, moving forward and looking forward, can people get supported to do that? We want more people in those arenas, but they are gonna need support, and that support needs to be acknowledged, not just by people who want them in there, but by the actual system, council itself.
Yeah, and one of the things I was so grateful for was the people who came out on Saturday. I had another meeting, so I couldn't be there at the beginning, but I just wanted to thank you all for coming out in support on Saturday. And I noticed in the Black community, we often offer support when people are going through hard times, but it's often we don't know what's happened before. Because I've had so many calls, I haven't even been able to return all the calls of people saying, we need to do something. And I'm saying, yeah, and the thing you need to do is overwhelm them with Black people wanting to take positions, and eventually we will trickle through. So even though I've stepped down, I am not saying no other Black people should go forward as councillors. I'm saying let's keep going. One of the reasons, and I think the main reason I was attacked, is because I set up the Pipeline Project, which trained, mentored and supported Black people to become councillors. This is all African heritage people. We started in 2018, and of the first 6 people who were on the course in 2018, 3 of us got elected in 2021. It would have been 2020 had it not been for the pandemic. So in just 2 years, we got 3 councillors, or 50% success rate. Now people look and think there is no way we can let her keep running that program, because all the skills and the inside knowledge that people who have had councillors in their family for generations have, we started to pull that through. And so a lot of effort was made to keep people from the Pipeline Project off the panel. 2 of the strongest candidates had to appeal. And even then, one of them had to have a second appeal, because it was like, we need to keep them off, because they will come after our power base and we're not going to have it. And it doesn't matter if we appear to be racist. I'm saying appear to be because I'm working on the assumption that they may not be actively racist. It's about defending power and about saying, I don't care if you accuse me of racism. I don't care even if it's obvious, because I run the appeals procedure and I will exonerate myself, which is exactly what they've done. We go up to Yorkshire, regional exonerate themselves. You go up to national exonerate themselves. So they know there is no consequence. I mentioned in my letter that I was women's officer for City Party, which is the Labour organising group for the whole of Manchester. So it covers 5 CLPs. And when I stood for election, it was just myself and Akua who stood as women's officer. 8 people in the room of 50 odd wrote derogatory comments on the ballot paper, folded those ballot papers up and put them in the box with me in the room. This isn't accidental. This isn't, oh, we didn't realise it was offensive. This is deliberate. We want you to know that we hate you. They didn't do this for any other candidate standing for election. And yet, City Party in Manchester refused to carry out any kind of investigation as to who did it. And even when they did do the very least, which was race awareness training, they cancelled the training as soon as lockdown was announced, and they have never rerun the training. And it's 2 years on, and there's still not even a little online course that's optional. They're not even putting that on. And that is sending the message that we don't care. And we want you to know that we don't care.
Can I just ask, Marcia, have you had any contact support from the Labour Party? Anything from there?
No, nothing at all. But
Have
I
you had anything from Operation Black Vote?
Yes, I spoke to Operation Black Vote and they have offered support. They haven't made a statement. It's quite difficult for them to do that because they are trying to work with Manchester to set up a new programme, but they have been in touch and they have offered support, and I'm grateful for that.
All right, but the thing is that you have a programme in Manchester and you're from Manchester.
Yeah.
And the pipeline already is proved to be successful. Yeah. So why are we going down to London? I'm not taking anything away from Operation Black Vote, but if we've got something that's working and proven to be working, then they should be working with you, not necessarily with the council or with you and the council. Anyway, let me just get a couple of these texts, yeah, that have come in. Thank you very much for the texts, and you can send them in. Text number 07599642626. And if you are feeling touched in any way further, you can give us a call, 01612225636, if you want to give us their point of view. 642 says, sorry, you've had to go through this, Marcia. It's just wrong. Can't you be an independent?
Do you want me to answer that?
Let me just read the others, and then the other one says, the system, the council, i.e. MCC, Manchester City Council, is institutionally racist and do not want black people in power. And then the other one says, it says, the Asians in power believe don't support the black community. Now that's getting into like BAME stuff, isn't it? And is there a difference kind of there in BAME and then African Caribbean? I suppose the question is, are any of the other councillors of colour, maybe the Asian councillors, supporting you in any way?
I think there are two things to say there. Firstly, this label of BAME has been literally a problem because if African heritage people are underrepresented, but non-white people as a whole are represented, they can and do say, "Oh, we've got lots of BAME councillors," ignoring the fact that African heritage people are underrepresented. I found Asian councillors to be very supportive. Not all of them, but certainly I found support. One of the reasons I am a councillor now is because an Asian councillor approached me and said, "I would really like you to stand in my ward. Can I help?" And basically bent over backwards. I would not have been a councillor now had it not been for an Asian councillor who did everything he could to get me selected. The problem is lumping all the communities together because it masks the real problem. So around about between 25% and 30% of Manchester councillors are non-white. But if you dive into that number, it's mainly South Asian, very, very few African heritage. And when Pat Carney was asked, what's the problem? Oh, well, we've already got lots of non-white councillors. This issue that one of the questioners talked about, institutionalised racism, just like in Yorkshire cricket, an individual act of racism from one person to a councillor or a council employee does not constitute racism. If the council is notified of this and do nothing about it repeatedly, that is when it becomes institutionalised racism. We saw that at Yorkshire cricket, a Muslim man being held down and had wine poured down his throat. And the organisation ignoring it. And this is what is happening in Manchester. So I will say, and I'm willing to say it on air, I believe Manchester City Council is institutionally racist. And this is because they are failing to tackle instances of racism. If you're going to have something where elected Labour Party officials write comments on ballot papers about black people and you do nothing about it, and even when pushed, and it took us months to get them to agree to race equality training, and then they cancel it, that becomes institutionalised racism. They also had a survey done of black staff. This is people who work for the council. And they found that black staff were disproportionately disciplined and were not promoted. And there was a meeting very early on when I was a councillor, officers saying what they were going to do about it. And I was just horrified at how uninterested the officers were. Oh yeah, well, we're trying to do something about it and we need to address it. But there wasn't there was no sense of urgency as we need to do something. We are the employers and our own staff are being discriminated against by us. No real, I didn't sense any urgency to do anything about it.
Okay. Just one more, Marcia. I got a text in that says, Marcia mentioned CRPs. What are they?
Sorry, say that again.
CRPs. What are CRPs?
CLPs.
Oh, CLP. Sorry about the acronyms. Constituency Labour Party. So one MP represents an area, and that's a constituency. So Lucy Powell represents Manchester Central. That's her constituency. Afzal Khan represents Gorton, and there are 5 MPs that represent 5 constituency Labour parties, or CLPs, in Manchester. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that's one of the things we teach people on the Pipeline project. What is the Labour Party? What is a CLP? How does it all work? How long do I have to be a member before I become a councillor? Do I have to be a member? Some of the things that, if you've been around for a while, you think is obvious, but it's not. It's very complicated. And on the Pipeline project, we've been going through this with people so they understand what you need to do, how you need to do it, how long you need to be a member, and most importantly, how you fill in the form, which is like a job application, and it is difficult.
Okay. Anthony, Anna, any thoughts, feedback, questions?
Can I just ask, I mean, because, you know, we did have a life before becoming elected members. And I know that Marcia, like myself, has been really, instrumental in bringing about positive change within our communities. And you see, the thing about that is that our white counterparts would be singing from the rafters, extolling the virtues of their academia or the work that they've done or the way they've championed, etc., various initiatives within the community, within the city. But for Black elected members, I mean, I remember going to the United Nations in 2012 and speaking on religious, linguistic and ethnic minorities, which was their language, not mine, disparities. I was the first elected member to go and speak at the UN, and I came back to Liverpool City Council and sat in the chamber, and not one of those people even congratulated me on the achievement. And this is what we see over and over again, where, you know, elected members do not get any recognition, and we don't do it for the recognition. But the fact that we don't get the recognition means that it is about a power struggle. Had that have been one of my white counterparts who'd gone and spoke to the UN for the first time, then, you know, that would have been in all the newspapers, you know, all the media would have been reporting on it. They probably would have thrown a party for it and had everybody into the town hall for drinks and canapes. And so I know the work that Marcia does, like myself. And just to make another point is the support that we give to elected members or potential elected members is very much an informal way of doing things. We have structured approaches like the Pipeline and OBV, but in my experience, it's about those countless hours on the phone talking through candidates through the process and what to do and who to speak to and who the go-to person is. And that really is, you know, really time consuming. You know, the big battles are done through OBV in terms of the national battles and raising profile, and other groups that do that. But I think in terms of making sure that we position our elected members in potential seats which they can take and do justice to, is more of an informal role, and that is about commitment from people like Marcia, myself, Anthony, you know, and other people who were there, who were pushing back in terms of the perception of us as Black people. I mean, you know, somebody, you know, said to me in the council, well, you're not really Black, are you? And I'm like, well, I am Black. My father's from Kingston, Jamaica, and yes, I am Black. But, you know, that's the kind of thing you're up against. It's like, it's almost this othering You know, we want you to be one of us. You're not really one of those. You know, you can join our club as long as you play by our rules and you do as we say. The minute you deviate from those rules, then all hell breaks loose. And Marcia, unfortunately, has fallen victim to that as well.
Hearing you say that and speak like that, it makes it sound like to get into those places, it's like you're climbing Everest.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh gosh, really, why would anybody really want to put themselves in that situation?
Because we need to bring about that change. I mean, no society can function if it doesn't have representation and we don't get the views of everybody within that society being portrayed. You know, we're talking about setting policy. I mean, you know, political life is not just about going out and, you know, doing surgeries and speaking to constituents. It's also about challenging policy and implementing policy, unpicking policy. I mean, I spent 10 years just trying to get my council to start doing an equality impact assessment in the correct manner on the reports that they were doing about changing policy and implementation, because there was never any consideration of people from my community and how their decisions were actually impacting on the lives of Black people's education, employability, business, mental health and well-being. And so, you know, it's a massive task. It's not, you're not just going in there to be a figurehead and go, look at me, I'm a Black woman councillor, I'm a Black man councillor. You're actually in there to roll up your sleeves and actually get on with the job in hand, which is about challenging the structures and the processes, you know, and changing the culture and psyche. And, you know, and that is a big issue. You're walking into a culture that has been in denial in terms of our abilities to participate for, you know, thousands of years. And so, you know, that's a mammoth task in itself. The only way we can change that culture and psyche is by ensuring that we get more people of colour through the door, representing, but more importantly, changing the structures so we can deal with the disparities and redress the balance.
Definitely. Anthony?
Yeah, I must say I was really horrified to hear what had happened to Marcia. And, you know, I felt that I had to show solidarity, show support. I've worked with Marcia for a few years now in Windrush, and when Marcia said she was going to stand for elections, you know, I made a point of going and helping her to canvass and support her, because I just wanted her to feel that, you know, we were behind her. And I think it's really, really important for councillors or other people in these institutions to feel that, you know, the community is behind them, the community is supporting them. And that's why we went out there, just to make sure that everybody knew that we were standing with Marcia. And also, I wanted to try to put in place a support mechanism, a network, if you like. And we have plans to launch the net. It's a bit late now for Marcia, but the idea was that, you know, we would meet as a group of, you know, Windrush volunteers and councillors around the region. So we'd meet 1 month in Liverpool, and then we'll meet 1 month in Manchester, and then Preston, and so on. So our first on our launch is going to be on the 18th of December in Liverpool, and we've called the network Windrush Pioneers, and that was to involve councillors. Councillor Anna is going to be there, and I'm hoping Marcia will still be there, but other councillors from Liverpool and Manchester and Preston, we're going to get together and develop a solidarity between us, because if you're part of a group that is supportive, it helps when you have to go into these major battles. But I'm also thinking about if that's the culture inside the Labour Party, and essentially they're the bosses of the administration at the council. If that's what your boss is doing, what must be the administration doing? And we've heard what's happening with the staff, but what about the implementation of services to the council taxpayers? You know, are we getting all the services targeted evenly across the communities, or are we getting shortchanged? And I was saying earlier that one of the things that we did, we went to the Ahmed Ullah Race Relations library, and we have had a little chat with them. And one of the things, the ideas we have as a result of what's happened to Marcia, is that we've seen that as could be the tip of the iceberg. And so we're going to start a research project to actually investigate Manchester City Council, and its services, and to see whether there are disparities in the services in terms of what Black communities or other minorities communities get compared to the services that white communities get. And if there is a major disparities there, we could be looking at having that looked at by the courts, because I think that yes, the impetus can come from the voters, but if there is another way, because let's face it, race discrimination is illegal, and if we can get the evidence together, then why shouldn't these people be held accountable?
Can I just come in there? Sorry, before Marcia comes back in. I mean, we set up in Liverpool the Equality Guardians, and it took me 5 years to set that up, and 4 different committees, because it was just so taxing on everybody in terms of it was an enormous task to look at employment, education, business, economic equality, mental health and well-being, the judiciary, and looking at all the disparities for Black people within all of those service areas. And so we finished the report. We went to City Council and said, we're the Equality Guardians. The first response was, hang on a minute, you can't call yourselves Equality Guardians, because it denotes that, there's something to be, guarded. And we're like, well, that's the reality. That's why we're the Equality Guardians. We don't want to be equality champions. We've had equality champions. They don't actually do anything. We want to be people who actually implement change and shine the light on the disparities that we're living through decade after decade. I mean, issues like access to education for our children. We're still having our children, going through a spiral into specific schools where the education is not of a standard that we want for our children. We're still having the same excuses in terms of why they can't go to the high achieving schools and why they have to go to the schools where there's huge difficulties. We're still looking at economic equality. Why are we not investing in Black businesses? Where's the support for that? Why can't our banks loan money? Why are we not able to access grants? These are all issues that are all about politics. This is what we're elected to do. Every elected member has got a manifesto that they're going to work to. Mine was on economic equality and inclusion. And so, we still have to strive for those changes. And it is like literally jogging in treacle. It is like 1 step forward and 25 steps backward, because the structures, as Marcia's already said, they do not want anybody to have any power. I was elected as mayoral lead for equality. I'd been doing that role for decades, even before I was an elected member, informally. But it took me 14 years to actually be given a title. And very limited resources, as you said, Marcia. You might get the title, but you certainly won't get the support or resources. But what that enabled me to do is that recognition in terms of the partners across the city in terms of education, business and employment actually falls. Now, she's got a bit of standing within this council. Let's sit down and talk to her. Let's listen to what she's got to say and let's see whether we can help. And unfortunately, what happened was, the business sector, education, universities, all rose to the challenge. But the minute that our council started to get involved, the bureaucracy was a stranglehold. It was really impossible to progress anything, because there were so many I's to dot and T's to cross that it was just awful. And that's because of the structure and the processes that we have to work within. And so for me, it's about all of those things. That's why we're elected members. And I can see your frustration, Marcia. I mean, I wish you'd have gone independent. I made that choice to become an independent councillor, because even though I'm battered and bruised, I'm certainly not ready to step aside I still feel like there's more work to do, but it's a personal choice, and I respect your decision to leave the party and to leave politics. Well, not to leave the party, but to leave politics.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one there, Anna.
Hold
I
on.
hope you'll be able to share that report with us. I'm learning quite a bit from what's happening in Liverpool and the report that you've done, because it sounds like the sort of thing that we have in mind here. So it'd be good to see, you know, how you've done it.
Anthony, somebody's asking for the
Feel the vibe on
Sorry?
legacy.
Someone's asking for the
I'm
number to
natural
text it.
mystic. Help.
Oh, you said about the thing, Marcia. I'm sorry. I'll do that as soon as I come back. I'll give out that the number.
Yes, literally, they're messaging me saying, "What's the number to text in?"
Okay. Shall I just give it? I'll say it out loud, but I'll give it to you
Yeah, go on
anyway. It's 075
Yeah,
996
yeah.
42626.
075 996 42626.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's it. You know what? It's just I have to just kind of like admire you both, Anna and Marcia, and for those who have gone into those arenas and had to deal with so much. Like I mentioned last week about Mrs. Brandy, who was a Labour councillor in Manchester. I think it was in 2007, something like that, and also Councillor SEUK. And I do recall them also talking about feeling similar in the council, and can't imagine how lonely it must have been for them. And I know, Anna, you said that how it was for you, but how, I don't know, because it's like you these are the people, and you want them to have some form of compassion, some form of empathy. And the whole reason why you think somebody would want to step into that role of a councillor is because they want to create a better community, a better city, you know, where people get on better together, they're going to work better together, they're going to build better together, you know. And what it seemed like there's some real deep-seated, I don't know, when you were talking, I get the impression of like a crust that needs to be broken down. I don't know how to get to people to have some compassion.
Yeah, people seem to have what I would call a binary view, which is if Black people get something, we lose. Therefore, we need to stop them getting anything, or else we lose. And it is a real problem in somewhere like Manchester. I mean, you look at, say, the Irish Heritage Centre, gorgeous building, wonderful building. You look at the Muslim Heritage Centre, lovely building, wonderful building, and so they should be. And you look at the West Indian Centre on Westwood Street, it is falling down. It's absolutely falling down. And it's not that one community gets and another community doesn't. It's Manchester would be better if all communities were served. But when I started the pipeline project, the first people coming after me were councillors going, "You are literally coming to take my seat."
Legacy 90.1.
Sorry about that, Marcia.
Yeah, there are vacancies occur all the time. There are 10 new councillors elected in 2021. There is space for everyone when people retire or step down for other reasons. In Manchester, about 20 years ago, they set up all-female shortlists because it was recognised that women were underrepresented. It took about 20 years, and now, as of September 21, more than 50% of the councillors in Manchester are female. They also set up the deputy leader position. Instead of just having one deputy leader, they had two, a male deputy leader and a female deputy leader. So Bev Craig was elected in May as the female deputy leader. And when it came to elect the leader, she was in a good position to get elected as leader because she was already deputy. But she only got through because of all women shortlists and because there was a gender ring-fence position. However, they have refused to do that for other protected characteristics, i.e. race or disability. So if you can have all female shortlists, why can't you have all Black shortlists? And when Roy Waters stood down in Moss Side, his seat was converted to an all-female shortlist and a white woman was elected, despite the fact that there was a good, well-qualified black person on the panel. So effectively, a black man was disenfranchised. And just yesterday, so I stood down, they've just announced that my seat is going to now be an open shortlist. It's the first time an all-female shortlist has been converted to an open list. I wonder why.
Oh wow, wow.
Because there are four black women who are qualified to do that, to take over from me. There are six women altogether who are on panel, i.e. available, and the seat has been converted. And it's the first time an all-female seat has been converted back to an open seat. And an open seat means men and women can stand, but in practice, open seats, men always get them.
This is why I really am pleased that Anna and Anthony was able to join us, because even just what you've shared in this short space of time, my head's like twirling, yeah, and it needs to continue. This conversation needs to continue. There's too many, let me just say, bricks that are being thrown that needs to be broken down, and it's not going to be done in a day. It's not going to be done even in years. But things need to be put in place that has that potential to last for years and be sustainable. Let me just get through some of these texts that's just coming in here, please. So, well, I don't even know if I can see my glasses on. Right, bam, bam, bam. The system, the council, I think I've read that one. CRP, search engine, Butterfly Sue, she's saying she lives in Gorton and she fell and hurt her knee on the pavement. Sorry about that, and you can get onto your council. Labour don't give Jack doo-doo about black people. That's from 841. Marcia, you are a star. Would you be an independent candidate? All those who voted Labour to vote for you. Thanks for that. Then another one just says Marcia, and it's got some hearts on it. And then another one says pity they wore you down. And then 712 says just tuned in and listened briefly to Marcia and Anna just now. Called in too. Just want to show solidarity to Marcia for the fantastic work she has done, especially with the pipeline project. She was instrumental in helping me get on the panel. Best regards, Councillor Tete from Salford.
Yeah, that's Nathaniel. He's one of the three who got elected. Myself, Ekua, and Nathaniel got elected this May. And I was just really delighted. One of the reasons I stepped down is because, unlike some other people, I haven't wanted to be a councillor that desperately. I wanted there to be more black councillors, but I didn't have to be one of them. But it seemed a bit ridiculous setting up a programme to create more black councillors and saying, but not me. So I said, look, we'll learn together. I knew nothing about how to become a councillor. And I thought, well, we can always learn together. I have other irons in the fire. I can't talk about it now, but there are other things going on. And I think it's important that we all contribute in our own way. I mean, just so much respect to Anna for going independent. That cannot be easy. And I haven't been at this anywhere near as long as Anna. Total respect to Anthony for the work he's been doing on Windrush, because that has really pushed people. The reason we know that there are more Windrush cases in Manchester than any other constituency is because Anthony forced the MPs to look at it. They didn't just do it off their own backs. When the hostile environment legislation was proposed by the Tory government, Labour MPs abstained. Lucy Powell abstained, despite the fact that hers is one of the most culturally diverse wards in the country. So black people are getting these Labour MPs elected, and then they turn around and do nothing for our communities. How could you abstain on something that even the Tories' own ministers said is reminiscent of Nazi Germany? Before they brought in the hostile environment, they knew what it was going to do. Ed Miliband had these mugs printed, tough on controls on immigration. Both Labour and the Tories have repeatedly bashed immigrants, asylum seekers, refugees, because they thought, well, we might get a few votes that way. All you do is push people to the far right.
Okay, can I just get a couple of these again? Got a question here. Can you explain how some councillors, this may be for all of you actually, can you explain how some councillors, let me get there, remain in their seats in our communities for decades and we don't really know them or what they do, such as Alistair Cox?
Well, I don't actually know Alistair Cox, and I don't know how long he was a councillor, so I can't speak for him particularly. But what happens in general is councillors don't pay an allowance. I've got
Sorry, let me just stop you there, Marcia, just quickly. The number for the text line, sorry, is 07599 642 626. 07599 642 626. Okay, you can call as well. Somebody said the call, but I didn't hear the phone, and the phone number is 0161222 5636. Sorry, Marcia, go ahead.
The way it works is if you are nominated by the Labour branch in your ward, you become the Labour candidate. And if enough people vote Labour, you get elected. Then you get elected for a term of 3 or 4 years. When your term comes to an end, the branch can choose to continue with you as a councillor, or what's called open the shortlist, and you might be on it, you might not. That happened to Councillor Tina Hewitson in Ardwick this year. And the vitriol that was poured at me simply because one of the people shortlisted against her was one of the pipeline project students, and I just said congratulations. So they close ranks once you're a councillor and say, right, you don't do anything to upset the apple cart. There are some councillors who have not spoken at any meetings, who have done nothing. Their job is to block that seat and make sure no one else gets it. It's not to do anything, it's just if you're in that seat, no one else will get it. Most councillors are not like that. They work really hard, but there are some, and their job is simply to occupy a seat to prevent someone else having it.
Marcia? Anthony, could I just ask Marcia a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
How many members are there in these ward groups?
It depends.
Roughly, on average.
There is no such thing as on average. So you've got somewhere like Chorlton where you've got 400 or 500 members, and then you've got somewhere like Ancoats where there are 200 members in Ancoats. But the last time a candidate was selected, only 7 people showed up. Now,
right,
in a ward like Harperhay, the last time a councillor was selected, 5 people showed up to select the councillor.
So I wanted to establish that because I wanted listeners to understand that if 6 people joined and went to these meetings, they could change things just like that. And people are not aware of this information, and that's why we get councillors sitting there blocking these seats forever and a day.
Yeah,
I think in terms of Operation Blackfoot, and one of the success stories of it has been about raising awareness and getting people to sign up, to become members, and to sign up to vote as well. You know, the reality is in the Black community, certainly in Liverpool, the amount of voters is it's really poor. And you know, the fact that I've managed to stay in for 4 terms is as surprising to me as anybody, because that means predominantly it's white voters who are voting for me. You know, there are good councillors, but you know, the thing about being a councillor, it's not glamorous. You know, it's you know, most of my time spent on people's rubbish, the bins not being taken away, housing issues, dog fouling. You know, these are the big issues for people in communities. You know, it's not the big national politics that we see on the news. You know, most people are interested in what's going on their doorstep. You know, the issues that they've got, that the house hasn't been repaired or they've got a leak. You know, these are the things, and you have to be a really strong caseworker to stay in a position for a long period of time, because, you know, it's those people that will continually vote for you. I mean, but what Marcia's saying, there are people who sit in seats and block them. I mean, I'm aware of elected members who don't do anything from one year to the next. You know, they might turn up for the photo opportunity, but when it comes to, you know, one of these councillors said to me they leave their council phone in the bedroom because it rings all the time. That's what we're supposed to do, and you're supposed to answer. You know, so you know, we have to get that information, and part of the mentoring side of you know, promoting Black leadership and elected members is about all of those, all the things that you need to know how to do. You know, most councillors who can get out and do their casework, who are out in the community, who respond to calls to action. You know, I always say, not everything sits with our own belief system, you know, but we're there to represent everybody in our ward, you know, but you have to show willing, you know, it might not be something that you're passionate about, but you still have to give that same person the same level of support as you would for somebody that is raising an issue that you do feel passionate about. And so there's all these things that you need to know about how to be an effective elected member. But also what I will say, there are gatekeepers that will keep all this information away from a councillor because they want to set them up to fail. And that's a crucial thing. You need to know who your officers are within the council, the go-to officers who get things done. You'll be, you know, sent to somebody, an officer who's notorious for dragging their feet and taking forever to achieve something. You need to know who's the person who's going to turn around your inquiries within 24 hours so that you can be productive. And these are all the little insights and understanding and knowledge that you need to pick up to be an effective elected member and keep your seat.
So these are like obviously long-term structures that are in place that, like you say, needs to be breaking down. But it's going to take time to do that, to get to the kind of like insidiousness that's stopping people from actually being humane in a way. Now, Manchester,
I just have to second what Anna has just said. This idea of you think you know how things are done, but information is hoarded because information is power. And if you know how things are done, you will get them done. And that is the last thing they want. So in my ward, I want to set up new parks. There's some land around the river. I'm like, you can't build on it. Let's have a park. Everyone goes, yeah, it's a good idea. But then it goes nowhere. And I have tried long and hard to find out, how do I get this land turned into a park? Who do I talk to? Oh, go and talk to estates. You talk to them. You just get the runaround. And somebody said it takes on average 2 years just to find your feet, find out who to talk to get things done. When I tried to hold a training session for the pipeline project in the town hall, I thought I needed to talk to members' services. Big mistake. As soon as I talked to them, we no, you can't do that. You'll have to pay. So I said, okay, happy to pay. Oh, no, they were not having that. Only later did I find out, oh, you should have just said you were bringing some constituents on a tour and then you can just walk in. But you always find out afterwards, it's not what's in the rule book, it's how it's really done. And nobody will tell you because once you know, you have power.
And some of these things, like I said, has been in place for a long time. So a lot of people have got used to ways of working. And obviously with Richard Lee's been there for 25 years, that's a generation. Yeah, but there's some other depths of history that I know Anna touched on in the beginning when she talked about Liverpool and some of their history. But we have that here, especially around the area of Cottonopolis, which is very much talked about. They even had a parade to celebrate Cottonopolis. They never really, again, talk about the benefits that Manchester has had and the impact of the people who provided that cotton. Now, I've got something here, again, I'm going to read, I'm not going to apologize. I'll tell you the person who wrote this when I finish reading it, okay? So this is a comment that was made with regard to the Cottonopolis parade that took place in Manchester. Now, this was written in 2014, and it says, Sunday, June 22nd, 2014 is the annual Manchester Day Parade. The theme this year is Going Global, looking at Manchester from Roman forts to Cottonopolis to world-class 21C digital city, the original modern city going global. Cottonopolis was the period of time when Manchester became a wealthy, powerful city on the back of the cotton industry, the same cotton industry that was built on the backs of slaves and the transatlantic slave trade. While Manchester is proud of many things that can be celebrated as part of the parade, Cottonopolis is not one of them. It is an inappropriate subject for such an event. On social media, there has been several calls for Manchester City Council to reconsider this part of its festivals, but these calls have fallen on stony ground. The lack of response is notable as despite the Labour Council having 100% of seats and the mix of ethnicities in Manchester has no councillors of African Caribbean descent, the Manchester Evening News, in its article, 10 Reasons for Mancunians to be Proud Ahead of Manchester Day, says that despite the livelihood of the city and its people depending on cotton, it was Mancunians who campaigned to abolish the trading of slaves from Africa. Well, that's nice, but that discounts the nearly 250 years of English involvement in the slave trade. And Manchester was a major beneficiary. And to be clear, we're talking about actually real life slavery on an industrial scale, not the slightly unsavory TV version. Millions of people were shipped across the oceans, and it's estimated nearly 2 million died during transportation alone. Some were even thrown overboard on purpose. So slave ship captains could claim on their insurance for lost property. Cottonopolis is one of the first ways Manchester went global. It's not the type of thing you celebrate by throwing on costumes unless it's supplied by Sainsbury's or decorating a float. I, for one, will not be going. And that was written, like I said, in 2014, and that was written by Dacre and Zerabi. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Because
just 1 minute, Margaret. Dacre used to be who was the Green Party for years.
Yeah, until he passed away.
And he passed
But
away.
the other thing that isn't mentioned is, yes, some of the workers campaigned against slavery, but some of the mill owners campaigned in favour of slavery because it meant cheap materials. They even sent money to the South to support the South in the American Civil War because they wanted slavery to continue so they could keep getting cheap cotton. So yeah, there were some people who were campaigning against it, but the moneyed interests, the people who were making money, were campaigning in favour of it, actively campaigning in favour of it.
It's great that we've got Manchester and Liverpool here this evening, because usually we have this banter this rivalry between Manchester and Liverpool. But what I was saying is that that's nothing to do with black people, because that was about who was going to make the most money from black people, in that there was a period when the merchants in Liverpool wanted to raise the tariffs for cotton coming into Liverpool to come to Manchester to be milled into cloth and textiles. And what the mill owners did in Manchester was to club together and build the Manchester Ship Canal that bypassed the port of Liverpool so that they could get, their supplies of cotton without having to pay the extra tariffs. And this is why there was some rivalry between Manchester and Liverpool. So I'm just wondering now, has the issue of reparations ever been brought up in these councils, for the trade that Manchester did and for the trade that Liverpool did? 74% of the ships, 74% of the slaves that went to the Caribbean came on ships from Liverpool. So, what is the authorities in Liverpool doing about reparations, and what is the authorities in Manchester doing about reparations?
I mean, Liverpool is, in terms of the International Slavery Museum, we quite some time back, probably about 9 years ago, when we were talking about reparations, and we had many lectures, we had various people speaking, but reparations seems to have this impact on people, especially because when I went to the UN, I met with the Working Party for people of African descent, and I had some long conversations, and eventually I got them to come to Liverpool instead of just going to London, to come and visit Liverpool and take evidence about people of African descent. And the one thing, even though I'm from Liverpool, that's troubled me forever and a day is that I just can't get my head around Liverpool, because historically, it's real enslavement, but also we've got the oldest black community in the whole of Europe, spanning over 400 years. We have free black men and women walking around the city, that weren't enslaved. And so we've got a really long history. But when I was speaking to the people from the UN, they were saying, well, there's no mystery about it. You know, if you look at any port city in any part of the world that's had a role in enslavement, this is what you see, which is this continuous denial about the role that they played and this reluctance to acknowledge it and apologise, you know, for the role that they took in it. And though Liverpool City Council did apologise for its role in enslavement, for me, the barometer for me has always been about economic equality, which is reparation, you know, under another guise, about investing in local black businesses so that we can stimulate local economies and we can have a revenue coming into the community, create jobs and opportunities and so on and so forth. But, you know, I've got 2 projects in my ward at the moment that are stalling. You know, one is the biggest investment in terms of black business in over a decade. We have 14 businesses sitting in units on an area called Lodge Lane. And the person who invested in that, a long-term investment, I might add, in the community, they've withheld the lease. You know, 5 months, you know, they've been trading for 5 months in these units. That man cannot take 1 penny in rent off those businesses because there's no lease. And, you know, and you have to ask yourself, well, what is that all about? You know, these are 14 businesses from the global majority, successful businesses. The units are for small businesses. We've already got 3 businesses who need to move into bigger premises because they've been so successful. And yes, there's been no investment in that. The other is the Caribbean Centre that you come into on the 18th in terms of Windrush, to have that meeting. You know, the lease is being held over there. That has been in the community since the 70s. And, you know, and they've just turned round after negotiating for months and months on end and said, well, you know, we can't deal with the committee. We have to deal with your legal representation. And I'm like, are you crazy? You know, the reality is every penny that this community's got goes into that centre, and they don't generate enough of an income to be paying for legal representation. That's where friends and allies like Anthony come in, and other people that will be of use to support communities. So when we look at, you know, the history of both Liverpool and Manchester, and we look at reparations, even if they can't get their head around what we mean by reparation and how it should impact on our community after the generations and generations of, you know, trauma and, you know, financial financial issues in terms of us being able to make a living, and also to reclaim the land that was taken away from us, and the history and heritage and jewellery and so on, and artefacts, etc. You know, the starting point will be, you know, invest in black businesses. You know, let us take ourselves out of poverty, because you're certainly not going to make sure that we get jobs in the city centre. So the only way that we're going to create any economy within the black community is by creating it through, you know, wealth distribution and making sure that we do it by black-led businesses.
Okay, we're going to go to a break and then we'll come back. But I'll just say that a debate I'd like to see taking place in Manchester City Council is one to do with the ship that's on the coat of arms. Because the discussion is still out. There's still the denial whether that ship actually carried slaves. They do agree that it carried cotton, but remember it was a 3-pronged journey, and cotton was only one part of that journey. We'll be right back. And that.
Feel the vibe on Legacy. Legacy.
WI.
Right. When we come back, I've got quite a few texts that have come in. So I'll get through to them, and we're literally going to have like 10-15 minutes left.
All right, I'm just going to take a break.
So, yeah. So anything that you want to say, Anthony, Anna, when you come back, I'll just give you the time to do that. Like I said, it is so much that you've shared. I mean, I'm going to have to go back and just sit back and listen to the show again because of how much information, valuable information that you've shared. But I do definitely think, well, I know the conversation has never stopped for yourself, Anna, and for you, Anthony, but I think it does need to continue with there was something that I read, and I think Marcia could testament to that, and I think it was said by MP Afzal Khan with regard to being at the table. especially when funds are being shared out, and saying that if you're not at the table, then you're not going to get anything. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, for how long people from an African Caribbean community haven't been at the table, can you say that that's the reason why there has been a woeful lack of funding and support for projects in our communities? I'll ask you that, Anna.
Nice. Sorry. Oh.
You didn't get
Sorry,
that.
I thought it was on. Yeah, no, I did actually. I mean, but this is the issue. You know, this is a form of enslavement in itself. This is modern day slavery. You know, if you keep somebody in poverty because of the lack of opportunities, the lack of access to funds, then you know that's a political choice. You know, that doesn't just happen. It's orchestrated to that effect, and we see that across many communities who live in poverty. But I think when you look at the Black community, I think when we crunch up at the numbers and we look at the impact that it has on Black communities, we can see quite clearly that there are more disparities in terms of Black communities and how they're accessing the funding. And then, you know, during the European funds and European Regional Development Fund and European Social Funds and things like that, when there was lots and lots of money coming into inner cities, certainly in Liverpool. And then what was created there was this sort of approach for everybody scramble around for the crumbs. And so what you had, you know, this was the first time that we'd seen competition amongst organisations. Before that, the not-for-profit sector used to work quite closely together in terms of pulling funds in. European funding and the way it was distributed actually pitched communities against communities, organisations against organisations, because it was a competitive process. You had to outbid an organisation that did some similar things as yourself in order to make sure that you received the funding. And so this really took Black communities even into a deeper void over a period of time, because what that created was, you know, a situation where people were not standing in solidarity with each other. They were competing against each other. And if you look at enslavement, we looked at, you know, if you go back, you know, hundreds of years ago, this kind of approach was created, a designated approach in terms of an orchestrated behaviour within Black communities where, you know, some people worked in the fields and some people worked in the houses and some people. So this structure has always been a divide and rule structure and is used politically to stop communities moving forward.
Okay, Anna, thank you very, very much for that. And for you listeners who just came back when Anna was just finishing, I asked her a question about needing to be at the table, decision making, especially when money's being shared out. So that was the explanation that Anna gave there. Let me just get to some of these texts, and some of them are actually questions. So hopefully Marcia will be back in a bit, and she can actually answer to some of these as well. Okay, I'll just have a look at some that maybe just something to say. Okay. Okay, Marcia, I've got some questions here in Texas, so let me get through. Whoever can answer them, maybe it's you, Marcia, or you, Anna, or Anthony. Let me start with this one. Questions. Can you? Okay, got that one. Can you say the number? Oh, I got that. Question. Sign up to become what? Can you explain why I would want to be a member? Is this the way I can influence my local councillors to change?
Well, becoming a member enables you to choose who becomes your local councillor. And if they take your views on board, hopefully they will change their policies. So it's quite a long-winded process, but you join the party. After you've been there for 6 months, you're eligible to vote when you choose the next councillor for your area. And then it's about just keeping on at them and the scrutiny, saying, you know, we elected you to do this, you know, don't assume you'll automatically be reselected. What have you done? How far have you got? You can't just sit back. You do have to remind the local councillor that your vote isn't taken for granted. But if you're a member of the Labour Party, you select the Labour councillor. And in Manchester, 94 out of 96 councillors are Labour. So that's where all the power is.
Okay.
But the issue around accountability is a really crucial issue in terms of scrutinising what an elected member does in terms of global majority elected members, because it's very difficult to quantify the work that we do, because a lot of it is about struggling in order to be able to do what we know needs to be done within communities. And then, Marcia spoke about emailing officers and they don't even respond and things like that. So there's all that going on inside as well. And so I think, it's difficult as a Labour councillor because we are whipped, and there are things that you can say and you can't say. And there will be ramifications if you're vocal about certain issues. But, the reality is that, people need to understand just what we're able to do and really what is orchestrated against us so that we can't do it. We need to be able to be vocal about that for people to have any understanding. I mean, for example, people say to me, well, what did you do as a equality lead? Well, my word, if you've got a couple of hours to sit down, I'll tell you, because I challenged every process within that council. I removed every hiding place where people could hide behind and say, oh, we can't do that because of this. It's no mean feat, the things that we have to do as elected members. But, being able to be open and honest and speak about it is another story. So if you become a member and you come to your branch meeting or you come to your constituency Labour Party meeting and you ask that question, elected members have a duty to respond to you and tell you the truth, answer openly and honestly. And so being a member, you can actually change the way we do politics in this country. And I would say, go and sign up. It's a couple of pounds. If you're unwaged, it's really low, a couple of pounds a month. Go and sign up, become a member. I'm not going to dictate which party you become a member of because that's a personal choice. But I would say that you should become a member and you should be holding us as elected members to account. And that is one of the ways that you get councillors who sat in seats and blocked them for decades out, and you get somebody in who's actually going to work for the people that they're there to represent.
Okay, next one. Are you suggesting that you get to become a councillor if you have an experienced, long-standing councillor to push you forward?
So
No.
Difference.
Yeah, but it helps. Yeah.
In Manchester, I think, I might have my numbers wrong, but at least 7 or 8 councillors are the children of existing councillors. And obviously their parents show them the ropes. And in some ways, when I set up the pipeline project, is to provide that sort of information for people who don't have those contacts.
Okay. Another one has said, there would be no Manchester without cotton. Shame on you, Manchester, that this is what you celebrate with no historical explanation. 178 says, rest in peace, Dacre and Zerby, a true warrior and a gentle, humble soul. One away. Love. Reparations 0, 841. 841 says, get real. The Queen will not apologize for slavery. Her own white people homeless while she has hundreds empty rooms in her palace. Manchester City coat of arms has a slave ship and a lion. I haven't seen no lion in Manchester apart from the zoo. And obviously the ship was bringing cotton. Sure. And that's also on Manchester football team's badges as well. Okay, yeah, not true. Thank you for that. I've got one here, a couple here. One for you, Marcia. Marcia, did you reach out to experienced Black councillors around the UK as potential mentors and to run your ideas prior to present them in the council chamber?
Thanks, Richard. That's a really good question. And the answer is actually no, because I didn't have the time. As a councillor, your time is so precious. I am in a number of groups with other councillors, WhatsApp groups, and I did run them by them, but those are not necessarily all Black groups. I mean, I certainly talked to people before I put things forward and said, right, how shall I do this? How shall I do that? But not necessarily to Black councillors across the country, although I did reach out to the Windrush lead in Lambeth, because Lambeth has appointed someone as a Windrush lead, and the other Windrush leads that I could find, to ask them, how did you create the role of Windrush lead? And we even got the Lambeth Windrush Lead to meet with us and tell us some of the things that she managed to do. So no, I didn't reach out as much as I would have liked, but I did reach out.
Okay, got another thing there, and I don't know if you want to say something about that. The Caribbean Centre, the beating heart of the community.
Yeah. I mean, I was unofficial Windrush Lead for Liverpool. I actually took the Windrush situation to a women's conference in Telford and got the Labour Party to acknowledge it, because people were sitting on the fence over it. They weren't coming out and being vocal about it at all. And so I was able to take it there. And then when we had that period when the government decided to give cash out to celebrate Windrush, which still amazes me to this day. I mean, because there was nothing to be celebrated about our Windrush community. I prayed, I was thankful that my father's no longer with us, because he would have been deported back to Kingston at that period in time. But what I was able to do was to pull together about £50,000 and distribute that amongst our organisations in Liverpool for the opportunity to do some really remarkable work around short films. One of the interests, a play. There was a play that was done through a local playwright, Marcia Morgan, and various things that were done in terms of showcasing the contribution that we make as Black people to this country, to this city, rather than just throwing a jamboree party, but talking about the real issues. Anthony Kane, Zito from Barrack UK came up. We had a massive discussion in terms of Windrush with the panel and an audience there. So we were able to do quite a lot with 50k. Now, people might say, well, why did you spend 50k on that? Because it was an awakening in our community, because prior to that, nothing had been available to, talk about the contributions that we'd made. Everything we did about prior to that was about, the International Slavery Museum, which was going on about enslavement. We're not the sum total of enslavement. We've contributed more to society than being enslaved in terms of architecture and medicine and all those things. And we need to get that message out there. When we look at decolonising the curriculum, etc., that's what that's all about. We've been hidden from history with the contributions that we've made. It's time that the world recognises the contributions that we made. And when we're given funding or we're asked to talk about the issues, that we're given carte blanche to do it in our way and not follow somebody else's perception or concept of what Windrush is and what contributions Black communities actually make to society.
Okay. And great that you've since, Marcia. We need more opportunities for non-family members to get into politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that Anna mentioned decolonising the curriculum. I started an organisation in 1997, Primary Colours, that created educational resources. We went all over the country, working in schools, training teachers, theatre in education, teaching packs, and that's the work I was awarded an MBE for in 2010. So I got an entire career, almost 20 years working in that field before I moved to Manchester, before I got involved in politics. And I was expecting that knowledge and expertise and skills would be valued, but nothing of the kind.
Okay. I say that, and Anna, you've been doing the same thing for a very long time within politics as well. Here's a question, another question for you, Anna.
Okay, I saw the first question and now another one's just jumped up in front. So I'll answer the first one first. I mean, I worked, as I said, through Objective One Fund, and I was the chair of Granby Toxic Partnership, which is the toxic area of Liverpool, which I represent. But for me, it was really important that we could support our young people coming through and give them the opportunity to be vocal on the issues. And so I was able to set up the first youth forum, and strong-armed one of our local young men into being the chair, and protested and still protests to this day. But he's gone on to do amazing things. So just proves what opportunities, the impact opportunities can have on people's lives long term. But the second question is, will I go and set up a new party with Jeremy Corbyn? I mean, I have to set the record straight on this. I mean, I was one of the candidates that was shortlisted to stand as the mayor for Liverpool. And, you know, one of the things that I said is that the whip should be restored to Jeremy Corbyn. And because people are, you know, are so blinkered in their perception of what people are trying to achieve. You know, the minute I said that, you know, it was like a nightmare. Everything just went wrong, everything that could possibly go wrong, because people are incapable of being able to unpick what politics needs right at this point in time. We don't need people bickering amongst each other about, I want to work with this person or I don't want to work with that. We need some strong leadership. And we need strong leadership, not from the person who's the head of the party, whether it's Conservative, Labour or anything, but the leadership within our communities and how elected members can support that leadership in communities so that we can bring about great change for people. And so, you know, to be wrapped up on, you know, you have to have a unified party. And, you know, the reality is we don't always agree. And nor should we. We should be able to bring different values and belief systems to the same party. And we should be able to bring, you know, different ways of doing things to the same party. And we should be able to openly debate in a frank and open and honest way. You know, all this stifling conversation is no good for the soul, and even less good for our communities who would expect and better from us.
Okay, another one here, and you can just give us some of that.
I don't know, is this a planned question here? You know, I'm going to stay in politics because I'm, you know, an independent councillor. And that's not to be confused as a councillor as a member of the Independent Party. I'm an independent councillor. You know, I made my decision to go independent because, you know, I no longer have the alignment in terms of my value and belief system, in terms of the way forward. We've lived through some unprecedented times recently, you know, with the pandemic and food and fuel poverty, and, you know, the disparities in terms of the working poor, as well as the unemployed poor, you know, and there's no leadership, and people are desperately, you know, trying to find a way forward. You know, I had 3 young boys in my ward in Princess Park in school, and 3 brothers were sharing one coat, and they were alternating the coat on different days in the dead of winter. You know, this is the UK, you know, in 2021. It's like something from Dickensian Britain, you know, and this is why people are fed up to the back teeth of leadership and people bickering amongst each other. You know, we've got real issues here that need to be resolved. People need to be supported. You know, you've got people who are sitting there with fuel poverty. We've got elders who are sitting there freezing as we speak, you know, in the dead of winter because they can't afford to put the heating on. These are the real issues. These are the societal issues that we need to look at.
Definitely. And here's another comment. This is why both Marcia and Anna are both necessary to drive change, but they absolutely can't do it alone. They need the community too. Thank you for that. Let me just read out these other 2 comments that I've got here. Now, this first one's from somebody called Clint Gardner. So let me start again, put my teeth in. It is a concern that for me to read that the councillor, Miss Hutchinson, felt she needed to resign her post. As difficult as it would have been for Miss Hutchinson, wouldn't it have been worth fitting this? Over many years of working in the private sector, some 20 years as a union, no, wrong one, probably wrong. I am deeply concerned and disappointed by Councillor Hutchinson's resignation, that she was left with no option but to resign. I worked with Councillor Hutchinson, sharing Lambeth Council's commitment and strategy supporting the young generation, claiming compensation. She was determined in her support of the Black community in Manchester. Councillors like Marcia Hutchinson are needed if positive change for the Black community are to be realised. Let me go again. It is a concern for me to read that Councillor Hutchinson felt she needed to resign her post, as difficult it would have been for Marcia. Over my years of working in the private sector, some 20 years as a union representative, fighting in challenging cases of discrimination, I have to ask the question, was Miss Hutchinson a union member? If she was, what support did she receive for the years? I have noticed as far as representation goes for our Black Caribbean African community, we have nothing to show for the length of time we have been in the UK from our West Indian homeland. Correct me if I'm wrong, all we have is a couple of centres, a radio station, not much to show for decades of being part of the Northwest community. Then there is this new bill which gives them the power to remove an individual British citizenship without any right to appeal. This is why it is so important to support councillors like Ms Hutchinson and others who are willing to represent members of our community.
Shall I come back on that?
Yes, please.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for your support, the person who just sent that message or text. Yes, I did contact my union. I'm a member of Unite, and I spoke to their political officer, and they did what they could, but they couldn't actually do very much. And I think the important thing to say, I think an earlier call talked about me being broken. I'm not broken. I'm moving on to other things. I think I can be more successful and more effective in another arena. I can't talk about it now, but I made a decision to almost go before I was broken, for want of a better term. I've seen Black people get burned out. It's just awful to watch. And I could see that that was where I was heading. So I decided to go whilst I still had all my mental health and my faculties, because we all have different skill sets. You know, I've been sort of hinting strongly to Anthony that he should become a local councillor, but that's not what he wants to do and not the way he wants to work. You know, yourself, Anthony Downer, I think, well, you can talk, you could be a councillor, but you might consider that you are much better as the host of a radio show like this. So we don't all have to be councillors. There are lots of ways in which we can contribute. And I think it's really important that you work out what's the best thing that I can do. I mean, I spent 20 years running an educational publishing company, and some of the very first teaching pack we created, which you might have seen in the library because it's in the library at Ahmed Iqbal, that is still in over 500 schools. They are still learning about the Windrush generation and how and why our parents came over. So my contribution is not necessarily just in politics, it's in other arenas as well. And one thing we often do as Black people is try and stretch ourselves too thin. We try and do everything. And it's no criticism of Black men, but Black women are so well known for trying to do everything. And I am saving my energy for what I think I can do better. Because being a councillor is not easy. I mean, literally hats off to Anna, because it is an enormous amount of work. The casework is phenomenal. People are constantly asking you to solve problems which you don't have the resources to do. They come to you with immigration issues. You have to pass them on to the MP because councillors can't deal with immigration issues. We almost have MPs' workloads, but we don't have MPs' staff.
Yeah.
Can I just now, because I've gone over time. I think they'll let me off and won't tell me off too much. But so let me just read these last two and then get some last remarks from yourself with regard to politics and getting into politics. With me, I see myself as a junior elder at the moment, so I'd be happy to support like young people who want to get into politics and do my part in that way. Definitely love to be part of what you're doing, Anna, and you, Marcia, with regards to the pipeline. So last two here, Anthony, what the Black community needs to do is keep up the pressure on the government and the opposition Labour Party and the trade union movement over the Windrush scandal. Most definitely, it's a conversation that definitely needs to continue. Also, as this one, we definitely do need more leadership in politics right now. Glad to hear you will continue in politics because you are one of the very few leaders. Thank you very much. One more over here. It says, really glad this is recorded. It's been totally educational experience. It's lovely. Legacy has hosted these three wonderful people in our community. Clap, 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 clap. Thank you very much. Okay, so some last words from. I'll start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I gave the thought of being a councillor. I gave it some thought, and I did stand in 2004 with Reverend Juggler and Sam Brown in Moss Side. We didn't succeed. We stood as independents, but again, that was to challenge the idea that the Labour Party could have a free run. We just wanted to make that statement, and then other independents did stand. Colette stood for a number of years, and there was other people that stood as independents in Wythenshawe. So that idea has been turned over, and where I am now is in the law, and I want to see. I mean, my first case, would you believe, is with the Home Office, and I want to see how that works out, because if we do succeed, there are some other areas, some other targets that we could set our sights on, and even if we don't, I would have learned a lot, and come back at it, with increased knowledge. So I really do feel that is an area where we can make a difference. Yes, politics is important to make laws, but also it's important to use the laws that we already have. And I don't think, as a community, we've been using the laws to assert our rights and to retain our rights. So that's one of the areas that I want to try and develop as a community. Other communities are doing it, so why don't we?
And in sense of continuing this conversation, Anthony, anything that you have in mind, or?
Well, in terms of what's happened to Marcia, as I said, we're talking with the Ahmed Iqbal Ullah Centre to develop an inquiry into what's happening with Manchester City Council and the services. So we see what's happened to Marcia as the tip of the iceberg. If there's a culture within the council, then it must be impacting on the staff and how they deliver services and the policies and so on. And I'm hoping that Anna will share the report that they did in Liverpool, because that will inform a lot of things that we look to do.
Okay, excellent. Anna?
Oh, my work isn't done. I must be a bit foolhardy to still be here after all these years, but I came in to make a difference, and I'm not leaving until I've made that difference in terms of representation. In the 16 years, we've now got 5 elected members of colour, but we need to increase that, and it's also about people of colour understanding their role and what they bring to the table. And often people think let's fall into the rank and file and do what everybody else does. That you can tread water for a while and try and be part of the in crowd, but the reality is, as elected members from global majority, the minute you start to pull away, you will be rapidly removed. And the only way that you can make it a safe space is by making sure that we're strong and we stick together and we fight together in terms of paving the way for our young elected members to come forward. And we know nepotism. We've experienced nepotism in terms of housing, employment market. And so we also have to look outside of the political arena and look for partners who are allies. I'm currently working with Hope University, and I've just worked on the curriculum development for a social work programme in terms of the global majority inclusion. I'm currently working on youth and community BA as well for the global majority inclusion. I've got 2 more programmes that I'm going to be working on going forward. And so sometimes we have to recognise that we do have allies out there who will support and work with us. And, not necessarily everything can be done through the local authority. And in my experience, more can be done with the external partners than with the local authority. So, be mindful about where you utilise your energies. I also want to do more work on Windrush, and I'm the founding member of Liverpool Support and Grenfell, so there's still work to be done there. That's been a long and arduous journey, just like Windrush, in terms of supporting the Grenfell bereaved families and survivors, but we'll continue to do that. And also Mothers Protection of Children in War Zones, calling for a peaceful, peace. We've just had a big issue in Liverpool in terms of the arms fair. There was a massive protest about Liverpool being a city of sanctuary where every child matters, welcoming haven for people fleeing political, violence and political refugees coming to the city, and us offering safe haven at the same time. The powers that be thought it was a good idea to have the arms fair in the city as well. And so, you know, there's lots of fights that we need to fight. But you know what? The big fight for me really is making sure that, you know, the little people in our communities who struggle day to day receive the services they need, receive the financial support they need. You know, a big issue for me over the Christmas is going to be literally getting food parcels out to people who are going to go hungry over the Christmas period. And I've just ordered £400 worth of vouchers for people to go and buy electric cards for their meters, because there's going to be people with no fuel over Christmas as well. So there's a lot of things that need to be done. I'm getting old, I'm getting tired, but I've got to carry on for a bit longer.
You know what? If that's old and tired, then I think you're regenerating through this challenge that you're dealing with, Anna. Yeah, you feel great. Okay, Anna, thank you very much. Marcia?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the fight's not over. It's not about individuals as such. It's about a system. So I might no longer be a councillor, but I am working on other things. But the thing I do want to say is there is another African heritage councillor, Akua Bayunu, who was elected with me. She is currently being victimised in the same way that I was. Just yesterday, they circulated derogatory comments to all 94 councillors. Now that I've stepped down, they literally have turned the guns on her. If you want to support someone, there is someone still in there undergoing, I would say, much worse treatment than I had. Yeah, it is still going on. It's really a question of, you know, anti-racism statements by Manchester.
Where is the Akua councillor at the moment? Sorry.
Hume. She's one of the Hume councillors. Anti-racist statements by Manchester Labour Group are simply that, statements. They don't mean anything, not whilst they are still attacking a black councillor and have been doing that non-stop since she was elected in May. That's 6 months of constant disciplinary proceedings, just finding any old excuse to go at her. It's about getting rid of people, and people will stay in place if they've got support. I chose to leave. I'm not broken. I'm not down and out. I'm moving on to other things. But it needs a team. It's not about individuals. It's about a team. And I'm so heartened by the support I've had from people since I stepped down. The community is there. There is a strong and vibrant black community in Manchester. I'm not from Manchester, but I'm honoured to live here. The first time I set foot in Manchester Moss Side Leisure Centre, I actually felt like I'd come home. I'd never been in a black majority leisure centre before. I sat there in the steam room, everyone was doing their hair, and I just thought, this is what it's like when you're not in the minority, and it's never, ever happened to me in my life before, not outside of church. So there is a lot going for this community. Don't see this as an end, see it as a beginning.
Most definitely, and I think even in your short 6 months of going into that place, Marcia, you might have actually done more in that 6 months than some people did in 20 years, just by allowing this conversation to take place. So thank you very much, and we know definitely, even if you wanted to, it couldn't be the end. No way. Yeah, and so listen, all of you, Anna, Anthony, thank you all for coming on, and I hope we can continue this conversation. I know somebody put in that, Anna, that you must have your own show. I'll be happy to take that to facilitate that in whatever way can happen. Just the last comment here, it says, one says, Anna, don't forget, will.i.am is your mate now. You may have to have a word, laugh out loud.
Sorry?
No, this is a text that's coming to the studio. It says, will.i.am is your mate.
Is your mate?
You may need to have a word. Okay,
cryptic. Hello.
Yeah. And then another one. Can I be your? This one says, "Can I be her PA? Love to show the government up for what they are," and that's from 23273. If you don't vote, will your councillors still listen to you as a constituent? Yeah, that's correct.
I do. Yeah.
They should do.
But it's better than your vote. But yeah, I think yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I need to go. Peace and blessings. Take
Okay,
care.
good night, all.
Okay. Good night. Good night, Anthony. Good night.
We're going to be working together, Marcia.
Night, Anna. Okay, listen, thank you all for tuning in and getting involved. Much appreciated. Really important subject, and we will be continuing this conversation. It's very necessary. So okay, yeah, that's it for me. Next week we will have it's a ladies show. I had a talk with Carla a few weeks ago. It's going to be their first show next week on the search engine. I know I'm saying the first show, and I know that is my last month on Legacy, but you're going to get a preview of them, and then they will be working with me on other stuff, which I will be talking to you about and filling you up on once I get a chance to, which will be not next week, the week after, when I'll be talking to you about me leaving and what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so thank you all very much. Stay safe and stay informed. Take care. See you later. Bye bye.